there are some habits that are a lot more toxic and evident in the beginning that we as women tend to ignore.
Welcome to the Love Atlas, where we explore the depths of relationships and personal growth. I'm your host, Nana Sharma, and today I'm thrilled to have Chanel Delisser with us. Chanel is a dedicated fitness coach. Chanel, tell us all about how you got started. And I know that on your profile, it does say that you help women become their own body goals. So tell us all about it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I
Yeah.
I love when we met. I mean, maybe we can talk about how we met
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we recently met, but when we met, I loved just learning about you and your partner and what you're passionate about and what you are doing. And it really aligned with everything that I do as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yes, a big part of what I do is helping women become their own body goals. And it really started with a personal journey for me. So I started my personal fitness journey back in 2016. And during this time, I was studying to get my master's in occupational therapy. So that was my professional career. That was kind of like what I was studying to do for many years. And I reached the point where right before I was about to really start working full time as a therapist, I just kind of had this aha moment where I just wanted to use this time to really focus on my personal fitness journey because my thought process was like, if I'm going to be a professional telling people to prioritize their health, to change the unhealthy habits, to live a healthy lifestyle, I wanted to be living proof of that as well.
Yeah.
And I kind of just my relationship with fitness and the gym was really I don't want to say non-existent, but it was very basic and not informed. And really, I kind of was just the girl that would go in the gym, do a couple of squats, do some crunches, and say, like, that was a great workout. Like
That
this,
sounds like me at the moment.
yeah, I think we've all been there. And that's the thing about it. It was just like the whole entire process for me was very organic and natural. And really the way that it started, like I said, back in 2016 was just me deciding that I wanted to change certain things about my lifestyle, certain things about my body that I just necessarily didn't love, but I knew that I had the power to change these things. And so
Yeah.
I really started just documenting this process online, showing people like what I'm doing. I'm going on this really strict diet. I'm starting a workout routine. At the time, I was also working with a trainer who I call like my fitness angel because he actually trained me at that time for free
Wow.
for 3 months for free. And he taught me so much. But I really felt like that was like sort of like a guardian angel, kind of like, channeling me into this new world that I now live and work in.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I made like this crazy transformation in 3 months, and crazy in the sense where for me, my goal was to get abs in 3 months. And I did a really strict routine and I was able to achieve that. And people were really fascinated by that because I didn't, I didn't have a sports background. I
Yeah.
grew up doing dance and fashion design. So it was just a completely different world for me. So with women being fascinated by my transformation, wondering what it is that I did, I basically ended up sharing my workouts online. And then long story short, after working for 2 years as an occupational therapist, I was able to quit my job and move full time into entrepreneurship. And now I'm a full time fitness coach, and I've helped thousands of women become their own body goals.
Wow, that's very, very inspiring. And it's really cool that you documented this whole journey and then it started resonating with a lot of people and you were just kind of doing it for yourself and then something amazing came out of it. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
really awesome.
it's a blessing to be honest, because a lot of people ask me what's the strategy, and I was just like, I was literally just being myself.
Yeah, yeah. And then, throughout this entire journey of discovering yourself and, as you mentioned, first you were like, I need to work on myself before I need to be a trainer and I need to work on my body because obviously I'm putting it out there. So that requires a person to have a lot of self-love. So can you describe a time when you struggled maybe with self-love and how it might have impacted the relationships around you?
I think generally speaking, I was always a pretty confident person.
Nice.
I think that like I said, me doing fashion design and dance, those were always, moments and opportunities where I was kind of like not necessarily on a stage, but I went to the High School of Fashion Industries, so we would often have like fashion shows and things like that. So I was used to being in front of people. And so
Mhm.
I think that for me, I was always aware of just like when you look good, you feel good. That's like another motto that I live by.
Yeah.
And I think for me at the time when I did start my fitness journey, I was, putting on some like I think it was summertime and I was putting on some clothes and I was just like, I just wish my arms were a little bit more toned. I wish my legs were little bit more toned. And then I guess this is the perfect moment to say, there were times where I was like starting to compare myself to other women and saying like,
Right.
I wish I looked like her. And
Yeah.
just nipping that in the butt and kind of like saying like you should never wish to look like no one but yourself because
Yeah.
you're uniquely created to just be yourself. So that's where the whole slogan for me developed of like I want to be my own body goals. Especially because we were at the time when I was like on the online space, everybody wanted to be, everybody used to say like goals, goals to other people. And I was just
Yeah.
like, "Well, what about yourself?" No one ever says, I want to be my own goals, whether
Right.
it's my own relationship goals, my own body goals. That was kind of like just something that I would retrain my mind to remember throughout this process. And then, so I think that that moment of insecurity kind of came when right before I started working out. And I just realized that with fitness, you can actually change your body physically. And at the same time, it changes your mind. But you're
Yeah.
not able to see those changes until you actually do the work and stay consistent with it.
Right. And that's such good advice that you mentioned. You know, we have to focus on our body and what are our personal goals rather than thinking like, oh, this woman looks beautiful and her body's beautiful. And she is, but at the same time, I'm my own self. So what can I do to improve myself? And what are my goals personally to me? And, for everyone, it's very different. Our bodies are so different as well. And I
Yes.
think it's challenging at times, and especially our younger listeners. And as an educator, I come across so many students telling me, oh, Miss Sharma, it's really hard at times. I compare myself to a lot of people on social media. And, we all go through that struggle at times. But do you have any advice for our younger listeners, especially younger girls who tend to compare their bodies to other women and, where they're trying their best to lose the weight, they're trying their best to work out, but, not seeing the goals, especially because sometimes social media can affect us.
Yeah. This is such a hard
Yeah.
thing to kind of navigate because I was blessed to grow up in a time, like at least in high school, junior high school, where social media existed. Like it was more so like MySpace, Facebook, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like we weren't so consumed by it. I always like to say I grew up in a generation where we would play outside. We weren't on our phones, we were playing outside and
Yeah.
interacting with people very organically. But I do have a niece who's a teenager, and these are the conversations that I do have with her as well. And I think that the best advice that I could say to younger women and to just women in general is just, when all the noise is quieted around you, when the phone is down, the only person that you have to face and experience anything with, whether it's your thoughts, whether it's your day-to-day actions, is yourself. So
Mm.
always remember that social media is a world that is almost not even real because you're becoming so warped into people's lives that you don't even know.
Yeah.
So always try to just stay present and understand that, those moments when you are looking at someone else's life on social media, or maybe you're admiring someone, it's
Mhm.
like, I love that for her, but
Mhm.
what can I do in my life currently to maybe achieve some of the things that I admire about this person? And whether that is a certain, look in terms of like, oh, I want to tighten up my body overall. Maybe, the things that I can do in this moment right now is go to the gym or change the way my nutrition is. So I think kind of using it as an inspiration for you
Mhm,
is
mhm.
just the best thing that you can do, but
Yeah,
don't fall too deep in being inspired by people to the point where you want to look like them,
yeah.
really try to always remember who you are by just practicing self-love. And the best way to do that is just to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself by being conscious of what you're putting in your body and what you're doing to your body.
Yeah, absolutely 100% accurate. And also, this is coming from a person who has a really big following. So I really appreciate you mentioning all of these things and spreading that awareness. And it's so important for everyone to understand that a lot what goes on social media is not necessarily your day to day. It's just you're only sharing the happy moments, but you're not sharing your struggles and what it took to get to the point that you're at the moment. And
Yeah.
now we're going to shift a little bit of gears and talk a little bit more about I also had the opportunity to meet your partner, and you both are so adorable and so cute. So I wanted to talk about relationship dynamics. Each relationship has its own struggles and has its own amazing parts and also parts where you have to learn and grow together.
Yeah.
So I would say the number one question that I ask pretty much everyone is, how do you and your partner handle disagreements?
I think that we've definitely had to evolve into the space that we are in now, because when you first start dating someone or when you get together, you have to understand like these are two different people with two different beliefs
Yeah.
and two different like generally we have the same values, but in terms of the ways that we've learned to communicate in the world and even in our families as a man and a woman is just completely different, right?
Yeah.
You know, women sometimes, I know at least for me, I was often coddled growing up. Like my mom, I have four sisters, so five girls. I grew up in a house with all women, so there was just a lot of emotion based communication a lot of the times. So I think that that experience in itself was so different from my fiance Duke, who grew up in a house with two brothers. So it's three
Oh,
guys in a house. So it's just like the complete opposite. And I
yeah.
think
Yeah.
that his communication style was often more black and white. So I think that, we've kind of learned this like perfect dance with each other at this point. We've been together for 6 years now. So it's just about, I think some of the basis of what we've learned to do is just clearly communicate and know when you are ready to communicate. So sometimes for me, if I'm too overly emotional or if it's just like too soon to communicate, I let him know that like I need some time and maybe later in the day we'll communicate about this. And with him, he's able to communicate about anything at any point in time, usually.
Yeah.
Very rarely does he need time. But I think once he's learned that cue that like sometimes I need time, then we can have like a nice open and honest conversation. It might not always be the best things that are being said in terms of like he's not always going to say what I want to hear,
Of
but
course.
it's just a part of the learning curve of being with someone and growing with someone that you love.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's so true. I agree with that. And sometimes I can be overly emotional as well. And the fact that you're mentioning that you both have learned to communicate to the point where it's like, hey, at the moment, I'm not ready to talk to you. I'm going to come back and continue this conversation. I think even to get to that point, I have a lot of, younger people reaching out to me, asking me questions about that, like how my partner's not communicating with me properly, like what do I do? But at the same
Mhm.
time, all of these things take time. Being able to figure out your style is crucial before you enter a relationship. And sometimes you figure it out along the way. It's not something that, we're taught and we figure it out right off the bat. For our listeners, and I've had a lot of questions about what should I tolerate and what should I not tolerate in a relationship? Do you have, I mean, obviously there's so many red flags in relationships, but are there any big red flags that you can point out for people to look out for?
Yeah, I think that I'm a very observant kind of person. So I usually, whether I'm dating someone, whether I'm becoming friends with someone, I observe how they manage themselves, right? So usually I think that from just strict observation, and maybe this is some of my OT schoolwork coming in, but you just always observe body language, observe habits. I think that when you understand how someone operates on their day to day, or when you can get some insight on that, like for example, if you're a young woman and you're dating a guy who goes out every day of the week, right? And you're not necessarily that type of person, ding, 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 that's a red flag for
Yeah.
you. Like,
Yeah.
uh, I think sometimes there's a tendency to think that we can change people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the best way to understand someone is to see how they operate in their natural environment. What do you do on a day to day? Just kind of like understanding that first, and then you can kind of see like, okay, this is who this person is. And obviously, when you do get together with someone, there is room for change, and nothing is ever permanent, but like there are some habits that are a lot more toxic and evident in the beginning that we as women tend to ignore. Even a drinker, a guy who drinks excessively, and if you are someone who maybe doesn't even drink alcohol, or you just drink it socially from time to time, you have to understand the effects of alcohol and how that can cause someone to maybe be irritable or aggressive, or everybody manages the alcohol different, but alcohol is a very tricky thing for a lot of
Yeah.
people, and people use it as a vice
Yeah.
to avoid real life many times. So I think that observing, those like someone's social habits, social tendencies, and
Mm-hmm.
then most importantly for me, physical fitness and how they take care of their health is extremely important. So if
Yeah.
I meet someone and they do not go to the gym, or they're not active in any way,
Right.
that for me is a red flag, because this is something that is a part of my lifestyle. So if I'm in the gym for an hour, maybe 2 hours one day, you have to understand that this is a moment for me to work on myself.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think most people should, want some time to work on themselves as well. But those are kind of like my tips and tricks that I used
Yeah.
to just to navigate what kind of people I want in my life, what kind of man I maybe want in my life. And so these are things that I do with in my friendships as well.
Yeah, I noticed it's really interesting that you mentioned that because the first time I met you, I noticed that you were very observant.
Oh
And
yeah.
you were very, very observant. And it's so funny that you say that because growing up, my mom would always tell me that. She would be like, talk less and observe more, especially when it comes to, your future partner. And, you don't want to be in a situation where you ignore all the red flags when you
Yeah.
can catch them a lot sooner rather than later. So just being able to um, be in peace within yourself and, as you mentioned, read body language is crucial. And I think then you'll get your answers sooner rather than later.
Yeah, yeah. I think that something that my mom always used to say is that most people tell on themselves, right? So you don't even have to kind of like go digging for things a lot of the times. It's usually there in your face. It's just whether or not you want to accept and acknowledge that this might be a reality for me.
Yeah.
So
As you mentioned, friendships. So with, relationships, friendships are a huge part of friendships are basically like relationships as well, right? Like
yeah,
we
they
go
are.
through different phases of friendships in our life at times. And so what have you learned from friendships and what are the type of people that you keep close to your heart? And do you allow new people to enter? Because that's a big question too, because that's something that I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah. I think my view on friendships have changed so much. So originally, I'm not originally from California. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. So I grew up in New York, and moved to California in 2019. So 5 years in a new city is still, believe it or not, a very drastic adjustment for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
especially as it relates to friendships, because Some of my closest friends are still in New York right now. So I'm a very, I love like long-term friendships, people who've known me for a very long time, because these friendships definitely happen organically. Like a lot of my closest friends are my college friends.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been friends for over 10 years now. So I think that, familiarity for sure is like a safe space for me
Yeah.
in friendships.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to navigating new friendships, I usually like to go off of like similarities, in terms of similarities and like not even like someone that looks like me, looks similar to me or anything like that, but just someone who has a similar belief system to me, right? Someone who has a bit of a girl code, like, there are just certain things amongst women that, like,
Yeah.
don't do that, because like don't gossip about someone else to me, because then I might feel like you do this behind
Of
my back.
course. Of
So
course. Yeah.
yeah, so just like understanding and establishing a bit of like girl code with
Mhm.
new women that I connect with is something that is important to me, and what allows me to become more vulnerable and, develop the friendship as time goes on. But I'm more than anything, I'm a time girl. Like it takes time to be my friend. I'm
Yeah.
not the girl who just gravitates to people and just becomes besties with
Yeah.
anyone. Just
Yeah.
just because it's just not my style. Like
Yeah.
I like to like court my friends and like get to know them.
Right.
He
Yeah.
like, is this a good fit? I mean, it
No,
sounds
and
it sounds like dating.
I agree with that so much. It's so interesting because I've kind of had a struggle with that growing up where I would get too close too soon. And then fast forward, then I would realize, oh my goodness, our values are not aligned at all. Like what was I thinking? What did I see? And I think they were just the fun friendships where it's like, oh,
Yeah,
let's go do this. But
yeah,
then as you mentioned, even when it comes to seeking for a partnership, um, when you were looking for your partner, gym mattered so much. So I think
mhm,
even that, when it comes to friendships, at least at this point in my life, I'm like, okay, I love hiking. I love fitness so much. I'm always at the beach playing tennis, doing all these things. So anyone who's fit or is cares about their health
yeah,
and wellness matters a lot. Yes, obviously there are times where we want to party once in a blue moon, enjoy
yeah, for
ourselves, go out
sure.
for dinners
Yeah,
and things like that. But number one thing is definitely fitness. And aside from that, just as you mentioned, court your friends, because at the end of the day, do we want to go through the cycle of like, I'm gonna get close and then I'm gonna break this friendship off?
yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I think at this point, we're all adults. And I think for me, like, it's important to court my friends because time is so limited. Because
yeah,
I'm an entrepreneur, I work for myself. Like, my business revolves heavily around my day-to-day life.
yeah,
So if I make time for you, like, I think that I want you to understand that this is a special moment for us, because
yeah,
we're gonna really connect. Like,
for
I'm
sure.
the type of person that, like, if I'm connecting with someone, my phone is down, phone is turned face down, like
Yeah,
we're actually talking. And I
yeah,
really, the older that I get, I appreciate those moments so much more, because I just understand how just valuable time is now. So,
yeah, yeah. You have so much wisdom, and I know this is going to be a random question, but how do you have so much wisdom?
you know what? I really think too that, like, just having four siblings, like four sisters, just I realized how much we have so many differences in just like not the way that we were raised. We were all raised in the same household, but we all have different experiences with different people. So like,
Yeah,
and my sisters are kind of like my girlfriends in a way, because I mean, they're still my sisters. They still bug
yeah,
me, but they're just like my forever plus ones. And I feel like we've had so many like opportunities to just have like differences and like overcome those differences.
yeah,
Like, not only that, I do have to give credit to just like me going away to college. I think that's something that, if we're talking about younger women, like, I
mhm,
think it's so important to go away to college, because when I was away at college, I met so many different people and had so
mhm,
many different experiences. And I think
yeah,
that opened me up to like a whole nother world.
yeah,
Um, and then even moving out of your hometown, I think that is also like, not that it made me grow up quickly, but it spending so much more time alone without my sisters and
Yeah.
without a lot of the familiarity that I grew up with forced me to really do a lot of like self reflection. And
Mm-hmm.
like I have a therapist, I'm in therapy, I had a life coach at one point in time. So at
Yeah.
every level I do everything that I can to just understand myself more than anyone.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, going away for college, it's so interesting because for me, I stayed with my mom and dad,
Okay.
culturally, like,
Mhm.
traditionally, like my dad was like, stay, you have to stay with us. And,
Yeah.
they were okay with me going away for college, but it just worked out where I was 20 minutes away from my college from home. And in order to save money, and then I did my master's too, but then I was still commuting home. And then I
Yeah.
moved out a little later in my life, meaning like I was in my, like I would say, really late 20s. um
Okay.
and I think that you're absolutely right about that. You grow up a little bit later
Hmm.
sometime, maybe because you're starting your life, you haven't had that alone time, you haven't
Yeah.
had the time to really think for
Hmm.
yourself, because the belief system that you have is what your, family has. All the values that are
Yeah.
ingrained in you is like your family is what they teach you all these things. But then
Yeah.
when you have that alone time, whether it's college or whether it's later on in your life, that's when you really get to reflect and be able to think for yourself, like, okay, what do I like,
Yeah,
what
what do I
my
actually like
beliefs.
to do? Because
Yeah.
I think when you have so much noise around you, or just when you are consumed in your like living with your family or living even near your family, it's so easy to be like in a space where it's like you're ripping and running all over the place sometimes because it's like whether your mom needs you to do something, your dad or your siblings. So it's just like you're always doing this busy work. But
Yeah.
when you are living alone, or if you move away from family, you just kind of like forced to sit with that quietness. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that for me, that those are my biggest learn aha moments. Like, oh,
Yeah.
like, I learned so much about myself in this
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I wanted to dive a little bit into, I know you love working out and that's your passion, and you're doing it every single day and you're dedicated. And I wanted to talk a little bit about daily rituals. Do you have anything aside from working out that you have added to your daily schedule to be more of a happier person?
Yeah, I really like to listen to just some source of motivations. I definitely also do like pray in the morning to kind of just like quiet my mind, quiet my body, and set my intention for the day. But a lot of the times when whether I'm getting ready for the day or even like getting ready to like wind down for the night, there are definitely two differences in terms of what I'm listening to.
Yeah.
But I like to, in the mornings, I like to kind of listen to something that is motivational. So whether it's like a motivational podcast or just something that, whatever the feeling kind of comes over me that day, I set my intention by choosing whatever I'm listening to
Oh,
in that morning or something like that. And then sometimes it's just about being quiet and kind of just like really listening to my thoughts. I don't want to say meditation because that is not something that I've quite mastered or even been intentional about. But almost like it's my form of meditation because I sometimes I just like the quietness. Like I like to
yeah.
hear the noise that is outside, maybe the birds that are chirping. And
Yeah.
that's how I kind of like calm my body and my mind and just prepare myself for the different moments throughout the day, whether I have to have certain interactions or calls or just work duties.
Mhm.
Um, so that's something that really helps me personally.
Yeah, I love that. I start with positive affirmations or just something positive in the morning to get through the day. And I think it really shifts your mindset and just gets you started with the day, and like you're just a happier
Yeah.
person and more confident person as well. I would say last but not the least, if you had any advice to give to your younger self, what would it be?
Ooh. I actually answered this question recently. And I think that something that I am trying to learn how to do more of now, just growing up and just generally speaking, I was always on a path. Like there was always like something, the next thing that I was like chasing, the next thing that I was doing.
Yeah.
Um, that was just kind of like the course of my life, and it definitely got me to a great space, which is where I'm at now. But I think that I would like tell my younger self to slow down a bit more and enjoy the moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I
That's
think
such
that
good advice.
yeah, I think in college, I definitely had fun moments, but I was definitely the friend that was like, no, I have to study. Like, I'm not going out. You
Ah.
know? Yeah, I think I had a great balance of it, to be honest. But I was also very serious about what I was doing in college because I knew that the grades that I had in college needed to carry me into grad school.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think that sometimes people go into college and they don't really know what they're doing, but like I knew that after this, I have 2.5 more years to go. So like
Yeah.
I'm not messing this up and I'm paying for these loans.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, I'm not wasting my money.
That's
So
incredible that you had that awareness at that time because I was like, woo, whatever.
yeah, no, it's so funny because one of my best friend always says, like, I always admire that about you. Like, you took college serious. Like, I was
Yeah.
meeting with my professors. Like, I was that girl sitting in the front of the lecture hall. Like, yeah,
That's really good. And I think it's important to do that as well because, it's important to have that balance, as you mentioned, like being studious, but at the same time, enjoying the moment as well. Being able to really understand that, okay, yes, I'm in college. I'm not going to be college for that long. I want to study, but after studying, I also want to be able to enjoy and have a good time with my friends and like,
yeah.
enjoy the college life as well. So that is really good advice. I really appreciate you for showing up. Thank you so much for all the wisdom and all the advice that you have, shared. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Yeah, you asked some really great questions. I love
Thank-
when I love that we didn't prepare for this and I was just kind of like,
Go
I
with
don't
the
know what questions I'm gonna get, but like I liked it that way. Like I
yeah,
said, I'm usually the one to like ask the questions, like ask for the questions beforehand, but
yeah, yeah.
I
It's
like
it's
it.
funny because as I've been doing all these podcasts, I usually have an outline, but when you connect with the person, you just
Yeah.
go with the flow and it's just very natural.